Okay, this is my MC3313, I think it is. Crud, I don't remember. I think that's the right number. Yeah, 3313. It's an audio production course for Professor Nicola Redon. He wanted us to create a group. I'm sorry if the audio is messed up because I'm doing a really cheesy loopback trick because this is an ASIO driver and it doesn't like to send it back to my Windows operating system. They don't like to communicate well, and this is a really old sound card audio interface, so it doesn't really work well with Windows 10, so I'm having to do something squirrely, looping this back into the onboard sound chip. But whatever, anyways, I'm a beginner. Professor Redon wanted us to create a groove where we had hi-hat, snare, kick drum all on separate tracks. He then wanted us to create a bass and link that up to the hi-hat, where the bass and the kick drum would hit at the same intervals. And this isn't going to be a tutorial because I don't have time to get into that, and I really need to go to bed. But then he wanted to add a harmony, and then he wanted a guitar part, and I have I don't know, this thing called T guitar that makes it really easy to make chords, to make guitars. So what I basically did, guitar parts, so basically what I did is I took the choir harmony, threw it down in the chord section of the T guitar, and then I did the strumming pattern with my other keys, and so the strumming pattern used the chords from the harmony choir, and then so I didn't have to worry too much about mixing the chords correctly. So they more or less matched. And then I added a crash, even though that wasn't necessary. This track is old. He wanted us to put a compressor on every one, and originally I put all this stuff on separate MIDI tracks going to the same instrument, but you can't put, with Cubase, for whatever reason, you can't put like I don't know, you can't put like a compressor on each different individual MIDI track. You have to have a separate instrument for every single MIDI track if you want to have separate audio effects for those, I think. So basically I have like 4 instances of Groove Agent, which are all the same instrument, but they're using the same kit. Okay, the Vintage Kit 1, I think it is. And so they all have a compressor. He wanted us to experiment with the gates, the compressors, and the limiters. So one of the things that really nasty here was the snare drum was pretty bouncy. So I went ahead and slapped the limiter on there because the limiter is more aggressive than the compressor. Okay. And let's see, I left compressors on pretty much everything else. I did experiment with the gate, as he indicated we should, but because I'm not actually doing any mic recording with this audio, don't ignore this audio track down here. That's just simply so that I could actually record into this thing that I'm doing right now. It has nothing to do with the project. I actually had a flute, but the flute playing was not that great, and the professor actually asked me to remove it, so I removed it and then put in a melody, which was some sort of a glockenspiel or whatever. Anyways, I don't know, I'm still learning flute though. And by the way, Professor Redon is a master flute player. I mean, like master flute player. I mean, so that's what he does, man. So there's no way that I could possibly expect to well, it's like apples and oranges type comparison, Professor Redon and then some goofball like me. So anyway, so that's basically where it is. If you look through these tracks, see there's a compressor on the hi-hat, there's a limiter on the snare, compressor, and then I just went right down the line adding compressors on these. But the one thing that I did is that because the drums, I felt like the drums, a lot of times I have a tendency to have the drums overpower, so what I did is I went ahead and assigned them to a bus. I used this trick from Don Sigalis on how to create a group track and in Cubase. So basically, if I can summarize what he did. Basically, he said you select all these tracks, all the tracks you want. You hold down the shift key or the control key. You select the ones you want. Like if I wanted to, I don't want the bass in it, but I just want all the drums. And then so you'd go to F3. And then when you get to F3, you don't do anything, but you right click on one of these selected tracks, and then you go down to, I think it's there was an option, add group channel to selected tracks. Okay, and then when I did that, that created this I did it wrong the first time, and there was nothing going to this drum bus. But when I did it right the second time, then it went to number 2 drum bus. And so now, not only do I have a compressor on every single one of these individual tracks, which helps to, particularly my snare was way out of control. It's just a personal preference, and I don't necessarily have the best ear. I mean, Professor Radon has like an ear, like you know, it's amazing because he's a professional musician. He's just kind of probably gifted that way. But somebody like me, maybe not. Maybe I don't have like super professional studio monitoring headphones and whatever. So my snare was going away. So it does help to put the compressor in there to try to mellow things out, and it also helps to listen on other different instruments. And I'm sorry, I'm totally sorry this is rambling. I'm just trying to get this out here. I don't know. Hopefully, maybe some of my kids will watch it, but I don't know. We'll see. They're my only fans, really. My kids. I think they upvote everything. My kids. So let's see. Right. And it's gonna probably sound cheesy to you, but this is kind of what it sounds like with all the compressors put in. I didn't want to really talk over it the first time, but here you're hearing a drum, a drum kind of strum type. I mean, a drum arpeggiated type manner, or each individual note is being played. Then you go into the strumming pattern. I add that variety. He actually wanted the second section over here to be louder than the first section, but the only way I really did that is I added in extra instruments. So another way to make it louder would be to apply automation, but I didn't. And I put a crash in them because it just sounded right. To finalize the last measure, if I can figure out how I get out of this. Oh, right here. See, you wanted 8 bars of a melody, and then 8 bars of kind of contrast with louder, and then like a finishing measure of 17, and that's where I added in the crash. But as you can see, I can go over here into this. I can either go to these individual compressors right here, like I can increase the hi-hat or the makeup. Well, it's going to start over here in a minute. Hopefully my machine won't crash. So I'm going to hit, I'm not using auto makeup, so I'm going to apply some makeup for the hi-hat. See how loud that is? And it's getting chopped off by the compressor. You can also apply auto makeup, and if you change the attack, you can kind of take some of the harshness now. I would not want a lower attack on the hi-hat because I bet it would muffle it, the character of the hi-hat. I want that crisp hi-hat sound. Okay, so if I go back over here and take this down, see, did you hear that difference? You may not have been able to hear that, but when I drop that down to like 0.1 milliseconds on the attack, it muffled the hi-hat. It's not as expressive. I like that crisp hi-hat sound. There we go. And then over here on the snare, if we look at the snare, this is where I put the limiter in. Why did I put a limiter in? Because the snare was just so, I had it so loud. And a limiter is basically a compressor, but it's like at a really high compression ratio. If I take this off, let's see if we can hear the difference in the snare. Yeah, see, the snare is coming out a little bit louder. And at louder volumes, listening volumes, that could actually annoy somebody. So if we put this back on, you see that the snare is a little bit more subdued. Okay. And then the bass, he wanted the bass. Oh, let's stop this for now because I don't want my machine to crash. I've been getting blue screen of deaths, but if I go over here in the bass and we click on that and then we left click on the kick drum, we hopefully get both of those up. I'm not, well, it's not pulling them up for some reason. There it goes. There we go. if it allows me to select both, but you see here what we got is we got the bass lining up with the snare, with the kick drum. Now, one of the things that he wanted us to do is he wanted us to experiment a little bit with quantization, and not using robotic quantization where we would set the notes directly on the beats. Instead, he wanted it to be a little sloppy. And one of the ways that he wanted that to do is, well, not sloppy, but human-like, okay? One of the ways he suggested we do that is he suggested we apply iterative quantization. Instead of like quantizing like 100% and trying to get everything snapped right the first time, he suggested maybe quantify it about like 80% and then just keep doing it over and over. I think he said 80%. Keep doing it over and over and over until we get closer and closer to where we want to be. And that allows a little bit of a human expressivity. For me, I don't know that that really works because my playing is so sloppy in the beginning that I really need that robotic element. For somebody like Professor Radon that's highly experienced, he probably plays really close on time anyways, so he doesn't need that extra help. So for me, what might actually be better off is actually apply the absolute quantization up front, and then go back and apply random quantization later, which I haven't actually experimented with that, but that could be a possibility for me, which may work out better for me. Of course, if you're a professional, you already get things right, and you may not even need, if you're like Professor Radon, you may not even need quantization because you're just so on time, but so human at the same time, emotional but on time. And so I don't really have a whole lot more to say about this, except that I just wanted to mention that I did actually use a bus. So as I said, you can go into the individual compressors here, or because I have a tendency to make really loud drum parts, we can go back over here to the bus that we created for the drums. Well, see, there's the drum bus, and we got a compressor assigned to that. Again, I had a limiter on the snare to keep it from going out of control, but we can get this compressor right here and raise or lower the drums easily, and lower the threshold. See how that sounds muffled? It sounds more subdued. If we hit like a if we apply like a really massive makeup and then we drag that threshold way down, that compressor's working really hard. It really makes a way to take the edge out of your music, and we can I don't know, I don't remember what the release is, but it's how quickly the compressor lets go. So I guess if we wanted even more subdued, we'd jack up the release even more. Okay, but I mostly messed with the attack. In fact, I did a little deal on emojis, a post on emojis recently where I actually I did a post on emojis where I didn't have a pop filter. I needed a pop filter. And they're not that expensive, but I haven't gotten one yet. And so I didn't want to go back and edit all the individual wave files. So instead of that, I went and threw in a compressor, and I lowered the attack down to like 0.1 milliseconds, and that got rid of some of the pop. And it got me by for at least that video. So that's about it. I'm not going to try to over document this. I'm not going to try to repeat this or edit it excessively because I need to go to bed. The credits, basically, the credits are Professor Radon, who is my instructor, Professor Nicola Radon. You can go to his website if you want, and Dom Sigalis, how to create a group, tracks, and buses. Let's see if I can look at this. I hope that doesn't come up with anything ridiculous. Microsoft has a tendency to put garbage on there sometimes. This is my professor. He's a master flute player, and he teaches at University of Arkansas. Let's just go ahead and listen to this one more time before we close, and hopefully I didn't mess that up with the. Hopefully I didn't mess that up too bad on the drum bus. I can bypass it by clicking that button if I want. Okay, I'm probably like way messed that up, but I probably, maybe if I take this off, take off that drum bus real quick. Yeah, I actually like that better. Let's just play auto makeup. That's for people like me that give things up. It's working a little bit. Okay. So, anyways, that was my that was one of my assignments. There was 2 stages of it. It was to write the groove itself, and then there was to go back and apply the compressors, gates, and limiters. The gates doesn't really apply because I'm not using a audio voice, but the limiter did apply because my snare was out of control. And the compressors, I can pretty much put a compressor on everything, and actually put a compressor on the bus later on. I put a compressor on each individual drum track, and then put a compressor on the bus, a bus that the drum tracks were going to. That was my assignment.